All right, welcome everybody. Thank you so much for joining me. Thank you for being back on this journey of mystic times. I'm happy today to be with my dear friend Erik Peterson from Esoteric Journey. Yeah, Esoteric Journey, his own show, which you can find on the description below. I put some links. We've been having a pretty nice behind the scenes talking just about measurements and time and weather and heat and Celsius and Fahrenheit, which on the surface seems like kind of a very silly thing to talk about, right? Like people will like cross somebody that they know and oh, it's so warm, oh, it's so cold, and people might sometimes talk about these silly subjects very superficially. But I know that we started talking about it and I felt inside like, oh, this is going somewhere interesting. So I just wanted to hop into the recording and continue like speaking about it. But first, if you want, you can say hi and tell everybody how you're doing.
Yeah. Hey, everybody. Well, I find this whole realm fascinating. The fact that I can be in like the tail end of my summertime. So we're coming into the month of September now, and in North America on the East Coast, it's still hot. It's still the end of August. August is probably one of the hottest months here in Virginia. But it's so bizarre that places like Australia and where you're at, Rafa, Uruguay, is experiencing the tail end of their winter and they're going into their spring as we're going into our fall. So I just find that so fascinating that our realm, and we were talking about time zones. You have the international dateline, the way this place is sectioned off, how the temperature and the weather and the seasons and the time, and it all just seems different depending on where you're at. And I find that fascinating, the fact that we're all experiencing different weather and different time and different phenomena. It's fascinating to me how distance can just separate those things. And, you know, I know a lot of people work on models about how this place works and whether it's flat or it's round or it's a crater on the moon or whatever. But I still find it mystical and fascinating. And honestly, I don't think I want to solve the issue of what the shape of this place is. I just want to enjoy the mystery of it all.
I remember seeing this movie with Brad Pitt where he goes to Tibet, like for 7 nights or something, 40 years in Tibet, something like that. Was
7 years in Tibet.
Yeah. And he meets the Dalai Lama and as a little child. And I remember there's this point where he explains with a globe, like why when it's day where he is, it's nighttime on Tibet or something like that. And I remember like connecting like how it's so weird, you know, to understand that we're all on the same place, but the shape or the potential shape or the whatever outside conditions give different ways of life and different influences on the people. And like, for example, right now you're, like you were saying, finishing summer or close to the end of summer. We're close to the end of winter, but it's pretty hot here, considering it's still winter until like for like 1 more month or so. And we are like close in time zones, and we're close in weather right now in this particular moment. So we could be close in the same city in this moment. If you look outside, you could say, oh, we're in the same place.
I only wish it was about whatever 19 degrees Celsius, which is 66 degrees Fahrenheit. I wish it was that cool here, but we're up in the 80s, like the mid 80s. So that's about 30 Celsius for you guys. So that's hot. I mean, and when you add in the humidity factor, whatever humidity really is, Humidity to me like sucks the energy out of your body. When you go outside and it's hot, but it's a dry heat and there's no humidity,
Yeah.
It's tolerable. You can do a good hike on a day where it's 90 degrees. You're going to sweat, but you're not going to feel zapped of energy. But when you add in the humidity factor, and it typically, if you look at the what it feels like temperature, right, with humidity, it's always about 10 to 15 degrees higher. So depending on the level of humidity, I mean, it just takes all of that energy out of you. And I find that fascinating too. I don't really understand humidity, but
I guess it has to be with like more water in the air, maybe. And so perhaps it's less oxygen per every time you breathe. I'm not sure, that's just out of the top of my head, but maybe it has something to do. And perhaps even the air is a little bit heavier. If it's got more water, maybe. I mean, water is, if you put water on a glass, the air is on top. So I guess if there's more water in the air, that it might be denser, and like in jungle places and stuff like that, it's so humid all the time.
Well, so you brought up a topic that I've been exploring recently. So you brought up the Dalai Lama. And
it was unintentional, but I remember watching one of your videos about something like that. Yeah. So
yeah, the movie that you're referring to, the 7 Years in Tibet with Brad Pitt, he plays. I think his character was a guy named Heinrich Hohr, who was a German explorer and mountain climber, and he was sent by the SS to find the remaining remnants of the Aryan race in Tibet. That's the story we get, right? Now in the movie, it's a different story. So like the official story was that these guys were just climbers and they got stuck in Tibet. But the unofficial story is that they were sent there by Hitler to discover the Aryan race in the Himalayan mountains. And so the Dalai Lama plays into this because the way that they determine who the next Dalai Lama will be is a very ancient practice of, there's a word for it, the process, and I don't remember it, but essentially somebody comes to the child at a certain age and they lay out different objects that belong to the previous Dalai Lama, and they ask the child to choose the objects which belong to them. And if the child chooses correctly, then that is a sign that the reincarnation of that person, that spirit, is within this child. And then that is indeed the continuation of the line. Now, this goes back to Mongolia. So I had just been reading this book called A Story Waiting to Pierce You. And it's about, the history of Greece, and a man named Aberys Skywalker, who was a Mongolian shaman who came to Greece around the time of Pythagoras. And he was walking in a circle around Greece, visiting all of the temples of Apollo. And he was doing different magical workings, right? As he went around to these temples, he was performing different rituals, and he was looking for the next reincarnation of Apollo. And when he came to Pythagoras, and so I should say the Mongolian shaman carried what they called a furba, or a golden arrow. And so it's kind of like something that you can grab with your hand. It comes out here and here, but it's not attached to like an arrow that you would think of that you would shoot with a bow, right? So it was just a golden arrow, much longer than like an arrowhead we think of. So it was an artifact.
More like a trinket or like a heirloom than an arrow, right?
Right. Mm-hmm. Right. So he didn't actually shoot it or anything. He held on to it, and this enabled him to fly or walk through different worlds. And he could travel long distances in very short amount of time, because it was said that the shaman who held this arrow was one with God. He was both himself and also Apollo at the same time. So he was walking with God. God was ordering his steps to carry him where he needed to go to fulfill his purpose.
Some might say extraterrestrial technology or otherworldly, technology is the only word that I can think for that. I don't tend to put everything in like the extraterrestrials category and everything is aliens, but but many things seem to be connected to something other than our 3D reality, I think.
Well, I don't know what to make of this, but interestingly enough, Avarice Skywalker, Skywalker was the name given to Mongolian shamans who walked with God. So they were able to walk in between the worlds, and this enabled him to travel long distances in very short amount of time, as if he was, traveling through time or space. And he claimed that their lineage came from a place called Hyperborea, which was to the north and inside of the earth. So this also correlates to other mythos of people coming from Agartha, which is also inside the earth to the north, right? What we would think of as the North Pole. There's some ancient stories about sailors having visited this place and calling it the Black Rock. And there was a black magnetic mountain there, and there was a hole in the earth where you could go down underneath the earth and reach Agartha or Hyperborea, which is what the Mongolians called it. So they were from this line of people that lived inside of the earth. And Avarice was, a descendant. He was a shaman of this line of people from Hyperborea. And so their god was Apollo, which is interesting because you think of Apollo being mainly Greek. You don't think of it as being Eastern, like Mongolian or Chinese. But Apollo was a god that, the Mongolian shamans claimed was their god.
Well, what's interesting about all the idea of the gods, when we talk about them in plural, is this idea of all over the world, there being different, I think the word is cognates or different gods or how gods represent different like elements or functions, etc. And there's all over the world the god of the sun, of the moon, of fire, of earth, of the thunder, etc. And these connects. I'm so into the ideas of ancient civilizations like Hyperborea or like Atlantis and Lemuria and stuff similar to all of this, and how it starts connecting certain dots for me in my own research and in my own understandings. And so Apollo, I think he's god of the sun. And so one question I had for you is, in this story or in this mythology from Mongolia, do they call him Apollo by the same name, or is there another name and they like relate it to Apollo?
So in the book that I'm reading, the author always refers to him as Apollo. Mm-hmm. So there's no other name given, like a Mongolian name. So it's possible that Apollo is the name that they gave to him. But, I can't be certain of that because it sounds very Greek, only because the association of Apollo has always been with the Greek culture. But I don't know if Apollo is even a Greek word. So,
you know what? And the rockets, they were the Apollo missions. Also, I'm remembering now. Yeah.
Right. So what the shaman's whole purpose is he was sent out as an ambassador, essentially, and he was looking for the reincarnation of Apollo in someone else. And so he went to Greece because that's where Apollo led him. and he found Pythagoras, because in Pythagoras, he recognized Apollo, and Pythagoras also acknowledging that he recognized that he was the reincarnation of Apollo. So Abaris handed over the golden arrow to Pythagoras. And this is very important, because when the shaman passes the golden arrow, he only passes it to the confirmed reincarnation of Apollo. Now, Pythagoras wasn't the first. There was somebody prior to Pythagoras that had also received the arrow from a traveler from a faraway place. And so these shamans seem to function as the emissaries that find the reincarnation, hand over the arrow, right, signifying that this person is now Apollo, and they are going to bring the knowledge of the gods to the people in which they find themselves. And so the knowledge had passed on to the Greeks. And that's what the book is really about. But there's more to the story than this, because at some point, Mongolia, the shamans were killed. They were wiped out by the Tibetan Lamas. And so the Tibetan Lamas owe all of their entire religion, the religion of Tibetan Buddhism, comes out of Mongolia and the shamanistic practices. And in the book, there's a story of one such Lama or Tibetan that traveled to Mongolia and met with one of the Khans. And the Khan bestowed upon him a title. And in return, the Tibetan gave him a title as well. And this was a sign of respect. And so he was able to gain the knowledge of the shamans of Mongolia. And then he asked of the Khan that he destroy or kill all of the shamans who were practicing their magic. He wanted that to stop, because he wanted to take the magic and use it in a different way. So I have to dig more into that story about what was really going on there, but we can see a continuation from Mongolia into Tibet, where the way in which they pick the new Dalai Lama is the same way that they would determine the new reincarnation of Apollo. Now, I'm not saying, and the author's not saying, that the Tibetan way is actually recognizing Apollo, but they are practicing reincarnation. Like, what they're doing is they're taking the old Lama and they're trying to transfer his soul into the child. And that child then, as soon as they recognize the objects that belong to them, they can confirm that the reincarnation was successful, that they put the soul into this body, and that spirit came back, or however it works, right? They're looking for a recognition. And that's what we see. And the Dalai Lama in the movie is the one that we still have today. And he's getting pretty old. So it's probably about time for him to pass on to the next generation. And so that's going to be interesting to watch. But something about the new Dalai Lama, he became friendly with a lot of the SS officers during World War II. And there's a depiction of a monk, a Tibetan monk, a Lama, going to the Vril Society in Germany, which was the occult society at the time, and handing over the golden arrow. There's a painting of it even, of this handover of the golden arrow to some SS officer, right? So there was a recognition of something going on and a passing of the torch. So whatever came out of Nazi Germany and whatever came over to the United States, as far as the space program, you can see this continuation, this line. And in the book, he talks about how the Mongolians were, these shamans, and even the Tibetans became responsible for the resets that a lot of people are talking about right now. So they were actually the ones that brought about the reset and tried to reset the environment and humanity for the next iteration, the next round of the game, if you will.
Yeah, I find the Tibetan Buddhism very interesting in that I know it's it's got like connections with a shamanistic practice that used to happen I mean, that was in the area of Tibet before the Buddhism settled there. It's called Bon, B-O-N, and I don't know very much about them, but I understand that it's shamanistic in nature, so that kind of connects a little with the story that you're telling, and they have these deities which are, as far as the story goes, the different lamas or the different like advanced Tibetan Buddhists, they would somehow conquer these wrathful deities. So you know how many times the Tibetan Buddhism has these sort of deities which are like very scary and teeth and fire, and you're like, wow, is this a god? Is this a demon? And so I understand that these entities were sort of demons, perhaps connected to this Bon religion, that the lamas would somehow defeat or convince to join Buddhism and be protectors of the Dharma. So they would take these wrathful deities, is what they call them, and they convert them into protectors of the way, of the truth. And that's a pretty interesting sort of pseudo-historical or mythological way of talking about a religion transforming into another, or a spiritual tradition absorbing another one, or converting, or mixing, becoming a kind of syncretic expression of both. Because you look at Tibetan Buddhism and it's nothing like the I don't know, if you went back just to the Four Noble Truths of the Buddha, I mean, I hope I'm not offending anybody. It's not that it's nothing like it, but it's like super complex, which other traditions of Buddhism aren't as complex, and they don't include so many different deities and extra dimensional entities. And this connects again to what we were speaking before, how I understand that there is a connection with higher densities or higher dimensions, where certain kinds of consciousness or conscious entities have an effect on our 3D, you know, this Apollo, for example. And I was just looking at the in Wikipedia, at least I found within a list of gods of fire, in Greece there's Apollo, and in Mongolia there's three that I don't really know much about, but they many times have like this chariot is one of the common traits I find about them. And there's this one called Arshi Tengar. Then there's another one called Odkan, and then there is a female one called Yalun Eke. You know, and the names of the deities in Tibetan Buddhism are kind of like that. You know, very very strange names. There's this one that for me is very very interesting, which is called Dorje Shubden. So this is like a kind of like a Buddhist, I'm gonna search for an image, it's pretty interesting, a kind of a Buddhist warrior that's riding a lion, and there's like fire, and he has different symbols like a burning heart. And there is something to the story that you were saying. I don't know how much of what you were just sharing is like historical, or how much of it is just like in the book, which probably draws from historical stuff and then makes some artistic, takes some artistic freedoms, right?
So this is the interesting thing about Tibetan Buddhism, which I don't think a lot of people understand, mainly because it's been presented to most of us in the West as regular Buddhism. It just happens to be a different group of people in a different place. But that couldn't be further from the truth. Tibetan Buddhism, and you really have to dig to find this information, but it's there if you really want to find it. Tibetan Buddhism believes in demons. So they have what they call rinpoches, which will go out into the different villages. And this would be like a Catholic priest, okay? And so what the Rinpoche does, he goes around and he acts like a Catholic priest would, where you have people that are dealing with problems, and he attributes it to a demon. And of course, the Rinpoche, for a modest price, will banish that demon, or he'll take care of your demonic problems. And so it's kind of like a scam. And you see this, that it happens in African shamanism too, where somebody is afflicted, right? So the shaman is in touch with these entities, and the shaman would essentially put a demon onto somebody to cause them physical problems. They would come to the shaman for relief. The shaman would tell them, oh, it's a demon. I will charge you this much and I will take care of it. And then the shaman will get rid of the demon because the shaman's controlling the demon, right? Because this is magic we're talking about. So it's no different in Buddhism. The Buddhist lamas and the Rinpoches are in touch with entities, right? They're practicing magic, and they are controlling, we call them demons, but it's some type of energy or entity that is subjugated by the human agent, right? The shaman or the magician or the sorcerer. And when they have control over this energy, they can direct it where they want it. So they put it into somebody causing problems. That person comes to the shaman or the Rinpoche, and they pay, and then they get rid of it, right? It's a scam, but also it serves different functions throughout society. And so Tibetan Buddhism is another one that also practices tantric sex magic. And this is like the dirty little secret that they don't want you to know about, but the lamas practice sex magic. And typically it's on children that they bring in from the village, mostly young boys, right? And so within Buddhism, there is also this idea of going over the rainbow. So the rainbow symbolizes the bridge to the other world. And what they're trying to do is they're trying to go over the rainbow bridge into the unseen realm. And they use sex magic in order to accomplish this. This is something that's known, but not really talked about or written about. You can find it in a few places, but it's generally suppressed, right? But most occult practices involve sex magic. And, that's really what's at play, is trying to access another world through the opening of a gate or a portal. And that's what happens when, see, you have it pulled up there. So, I'm not making this up. It's just that nobody bothers to look because they want to assume that it's just a bunch of dudes up in a mountain just meditating all the time and doing chants. And that's not really what's going on.
Well, I think that that is connected a little bit to how people are very superficial sometimes in things. And you say, okay, Buddhism, and you just put it in that small box that you don't know much about, and just, okay, this is like another kind, and people maybe never explore it. But when you start exploring the idea of Tantra, there's Tantra in every spiritual path. I just wanted to say, I don't know how, I find it hard to believe, but at the same time, there's good and evil in everything. So I don't know, this ritualistic sex with children from villages, I hope that doesn't go on. And also earlier we were saying, or you mentioned how the Dalai Lama was maybe friendly with the SS during the war. I just wanna say he was like just a small child. I'm not defending him or anything like that, but I'm looking here just as he was born in 1935. So I just wanted to say that, maybe to say that he was friendly with the SS, he was a child, so probably he had a bunch of assistants, is not the word, but like people that would guide him, and maybe he understood through their guidance, okay, you should like be relatively friendly to these guys, because they understood they're crazy, or maybe because of this thing that is still very taboo, and I can feel within me getting like a little bit scared, and that's why I'm making all these clarifications. You know, I get a little bit scared because of this idea of the Aryan race. You know, it's something that is, unfortunately, it has been obscured so much and become so connected to the Nazis and to genocide and stuff like that, that today, if you were to just to say the word Aryan, and especially me, maybe because of my appearance, you know, and maybe you as well, just to mention those words would probably trigger many people. But what I think we want to point out is that historically there is this, or maybe just mythologically, but there's some history in myth as well. There is this idea of the Aryan race, and I've been studying Rudolf Steiner, who mentions the different. So there is in Theosophy, which kind of draws from Tibetan Buddhism and from other places, but in part from there, there's this idea of the different root races of humanity, is what they call it. And I think we are now, according to them, on the 5th. So the humanity that exists now in the planet, you know, I think we are the 5th root race, or the 6th, I think it's the 5th. And so I believe the 4th root race was the Aryan race. So you can connect this to the precession of the equinoxes of the different eras. So we during the Jesus time, it was probably like the Pisces era, and we're going into the Aquarian era. But even before that, there was the Aries. What's the name in English? The Aries era, which is connected there to the Aryan race, and this is connected to India. It's connected, or more exactly, I think, to northern India and the center of the continent there, like Iran and those kinds of places, which interestingly is all those places that still to this day there's religious wars going on, which tells you there is something real that was going on before this current era that we know about with our history books. There was something going on before, which I believe is like a time where we were more in connection with these higher realms or parallel realms, where different kinds of entities like the ones that we can see here exist. And I think the veils were thinner back then, or even the traveling between those different realms was more normal. We you know, this idea of maybe in some books or in some movies of they present it in a way that it seems foreign. This idea of us, or of humans in, I don't know, Harry Potter and whatever, humans having the ability to use magic and to have maybe psychic powers and the ability to manifest instantaneously, etc. We look at all that and, oh, that is fiction. And so we put that in another small box we know nothing about, and okay, fiction, whatever. But slowly I've been starting to understand how in a certain moment in the past, we actually were more in tune with our special abilities, let's call them, or what we would call today supernatural abilities. And we have forgotten them. They are asleep within us. Just like a person can run the whatever distance at a very high speed, you know, in the Olympics that just finished a little while ago, and break records year after year after year, new records. And it's stuff that the year before anybody would say, no, that is fiction. A person cannot run faster than X. But they go and they do it, or hit the tennis ball or whatever. And those things, because they are in the context of a sport, maybe we would say, oh, okay, yeah, they broke a record. It's, again, another box. Oh, yeah, records are broken every time. But what about stuff that is more extremely outside of our understanding, you know? What about the ability, you know, we are all starting to remember, that is the bottom line for me. We are all starting to remember how we are more powerful than we can imagine. And, you know, with the ideas from people like Dr. Joe Dispenza, just to name one, or there's this other woman called Sue Morter. You know, there's different people helping us remember. I just mentioned two out of the top of my head, but there's many people working on this, helping us remember how powerful we are, and even the physics of it, or connecting the quantum physics with the normal dimensional physics. We are starting to remember that we are, and that we have always been, and we have never lost those abilities. It's just to what degree do we express them in our everyday life? You know, maybe we would say now, oh, intuition, or oh, synchronicity. But I had the experience with let's call him an advanced spiritual practitioner, who I consider my spiritual teacher, and where I traveled with him for several months, and he
is this the guy that you talked about in your show with Nish?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. All right.
Yeah. That show recently came out. I'm gonna put it here on the channel as well. But I'm a little bit busy these days. But I'm gonna put it here too. And he kind of emanates. I tend to think of it as the aura or the electromagnetic field. You know, he emanates a kind of energy, a kind of. I mean, you can say it as scientifically as you want. You could say it's ions, or I don't know, whatever, that attract certain experiences to him, and many times they're magic. You know, the things that happen is like synchronicity to the max. It's like very improbable things would come to him, but it's like when you are open to who you really are, you know, when you're more in tune to your essence, which is this oneness, this non-duality, this thing that we all share, that is the background of existence, the ground of being. I don't know, there's many different names. When we start getting more in tune with that, which is what's happening right now, I believe, when we start getting in tune with that, we start expressing these abilities and powers more naturally, because there is so much of this idea of what you believe is what you receive, or whatever. What you believe that can happen is what limits the stuff that you can attract. So as you start getting more in tune with how powerful you are, you become more powerful, because the limits expand a little bit and a little bit. So many people in culture, we're all talking about manifestation, you know, since I don't know how much, but like 15 or something years ago, you know, The Secret came out, the law of attraction, etc. At the time, it was very fringe and very, what is it? You're gonna put a $1 million bill pasted on the roof, and you're gonna look at it every time you wake up, and then you're going to manifest it. That sounded ridiculous, but slowly we've been polishing the idea, you know, and starting to understand a little bit more and put it into practice as to how it works. And now almost everybody in social media has a little bit of an idea, at least, of manifestation, and that is a sign of how we are remembering things. And in a way, getting back to the thing about the Aryan race and all that, those taboo subjects, to round this up. Back then, people were more in tune. Different parts, perhaps, of the brain were active, or different senses, etc. And keeping these subjects taboo is limiting, you know, the amount of our abilities that we can express. it's not that we have to condone and say that some terrible genocides of the past were okay, because they were not. But I remember there's this phrase, don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. And I think it's what we're doing. We are, because of the connection to such a dark past that as a humanity, I don't think we've healed yet, the concentration camps, the Nazism, and etc., all the Second World War. It's like it's still going on, the Second World War, in a way. There's these ideas of Antarctica and Nazi bases in Antarctica, and it's like we haven't healed that part yet. And when we do start healing it, we will see more expressions of quote unquote supernatural abilities naturally flowing from people.
So, okay, so there's a couple things. So I want to go back to the Dalai Lama, the current Dalai Lama. Yes, he met these people when he was a child, but he remained lifelong friends with them, and this is documented. So even after he matured and he grew up and he knew what they were, he still remained lifelong friends with them. He's also been associated with people from Muslim Brotherhood, which, some people paint as a terrorist organization. I'm not one of those people. I think what you realize is that you have to stop looking at World War II and the Nazis. So like we're fine with looking at, everything's a lie, all history is a lie, except for Germany. The Nazis, they were really bad people. No, if we're going to say that all history has been a lie or a misrepresentation of the truth, then World War II is no exception. So, we have to throw out what we think we know that happened during World War II. Were there people that were murdered in concentration camps? I don't know. I don't have those facts. I can't say one way or the other. I know it's illegal to even question that in countries in Europe. So that to me is an indicator that they don't want you talking about these things. Whatever the Nazi party was, whatever was going on, we know that they were into the occult. We know that the Vril Society was looking into all of these things about the Aryan race, which doesn't seem to be about white-skinned, blue-eyed people. It has nothing to do with race. It's not about eliminating certain races to the exception of the white race. It's not about races. That's the whole trap that people get caught into. This is about something completely different, right? The Aryan people, if it was these Tibetans they were looking for, that would go to Hyperborea, right? We're talking about a race of beings that's beyond human, that's in a different dimension. So we're not even talking about, skin color and physical features. We're talking about intellect. We're talking about consciousness here. This is about beings that are ascended or have been ascended for so long that we would consider them to just be aliens, right? Because they're not from here. This wasn't about white people. This wasn't about killing off Jews or gypsies or homosexuals or any of that stuff. This was about finding a connection to another dimension of existence. This is what the UFO phenomena was all about, right? The Vril Society was very much involved in, and especially IG Farben and some of these other companies that were working with Germany at the time. This was all about technology and moving us forward into the next evolutionary cycle of man, which is like the merging of man with machine. You can see this thread going through all of this stuff, right? And whether or not that's a good or a bad thing, I'm going to set that aside, because these labels of evil and good have to be re-examined within the context of the fact that all of this is really boiling down to an alchemical process that is occurring, right? We as individuals are undergoing an alchemical process. Whether we realize it or not, there is alchemy being done. We can either be conscious of it and be working on it ourselves, we can be the alchemists, alchemizing our own soul, right? Trying to find that philosopher's stone within us. Even the Bible tells that the kingdom of heaven is within, right? It's not being metaphorical. It's in a sense, it's being literal, that there is no external savior. There is no external thing that's going to save you, right? Heaven is within you, your consciousness. So all of the external garbage of this world that they try to trap you in, like racism and all of this stuff, it's a distraction and it's a trap, right? You should be looking within yourself, no matter what race or creed or ethnicity you are, right? And no matter what your sexual preference is or what you identify as, you are a being that comes from God, right? Whether or not we are God or we are a fractalized version of God, having an experience of ourselves, like these are all things we should be talking about, but not about all of this other surface level stuff. So the Dalai Lama is a person that realizes he understands this stuff, right? So it doesn't make sense that this guy who represents peace and meditation and all of this would be friends with these violent, sociopathic, racist Nazis, or these Muslims who want to destroy the white devil and kill the devil that's coming from the West. So you have all of this stuff. You have this good versus evil battle going on, but then you have these religious figures that seem to be friends with everybody that's quote unquote evil or bad. And you got to ask yourself, like, what is really going on here? And so one of the things that I've been looking at is just sort of setting this notion of good versus evil aside for a minute and looking at the alchemy that's taking place. You don't grow spiritually, emotionally, mentally, physically even. I mean, let's just take it on a physical level. You're overweight, you're out of shape. What do you have to do? What do you have to do to change, right? To transmute your current state to get to something that you want, right? This idea in your mind, whether it's being a bodybuilder or just getting in shape and feeling good about yourself. You've got to go through pain and suffering, right? When you haven't exercised in a long time and you start working out, there's pain, there's suffering. You have to push through it in order to continue. And eventually you start to feel better gradually. And then you're like, wow, this is amazing. I've never felt so good. But I had to really go through this time of feeling really, really bad in order to feel really, really good. So even within that, we can recognize that in order to grow, to be something more than you are, you first have to go through pain and suffering. Okay, so it's no different on a spiritual level. If you want to grow spiritually, there's going to be pain and suffering. And so everything in this world that we experience as evil, we look at what's happening right now and I'm like, the people that are pulling this off are evil. They're just out to kill us all. Is that really the truth, or do they really want us to grow? Do they want something better to come out on the other side? And this is a question each individual has to determine for themselves. I'm like, I'm not going to tell you that there's no evil in the world, because objectively it seems like there is. But what is its purpose? Is its purpose for a greater good, right? Is it the necessary evil that we need to create the adversarial aspect in our reality to cause us to become greater than what we are right now? And these are questions we should be asking ourselves, instead of just saying, oh, everything that's going on is evil and they're all Satanists and they want to kill us all. I mean, if that's your current state of looking at the world, then ask yourself, how does that make you a better person? How can you use that to better yourself, right? So is the Dalai Lama evil? Is he good? Or is he just an alchemist? I don't know. That's something that you have to decide for yourself. I mean, what was going on in World War II, right? That's still up for debate. So all of these things in our reality are really based upon our perception, and the perception is really just a choice. It comes down to, do I want to view the world as good versus evil? Or do I want to view the world as something else, something where like it's a challenge to me, but I can grow, and I need this challenge. I need this adversary. I need this evil in the world in order to alchemize and purify the goodness inside of me, right? I need to burn away that dross, that part of me that wants to do bad things or say terrible things to people or treat people like garbage or only care about myself. And then, you know, part of you wants to help others and wants to love and care about the world around you. And you see the pain that others are in, and you think, oh, that's evil. That's so terrible. But what are we doing to help people that are obviously suffering and in pain? Are we trying to just alleviate their suffering and pain? Do we want to take that away from them, even though we understand how transformative it can be? I don't want to take anyone's pain and suffering away from them. I feel like that would be robbery. I would be stealing from them. This is an experience we're all having. And if you're here to become something more than you were when you got here, then you have to have these experiences. Whatever path you're choosing right now, that's the path that is going to lead you to the growth that you need. Whether it doesn't appear that way to others, it doesn't matter, right? This is your individual journey. So anyway, I know that was kind of a long rambling rant, but yeah, I've just come to see everything as an alchemical process where the world is the alchemical flask and we're all in it, right? Our souls are being transmuted. And if you think about what is consciousness, if consciousness is a part of God, if it's like a fractalization of the consciousness that exists, that's all there is, and you are an individuated part of that, in order to fully realize what you are, you have to go through alchemy. You have to go through this process of transformation. And that could last many, many lifetimes. The soul's journey, the hero's journey, whatever you want to call this, it's really there to refine the consciousness, right? How can you conceive of yourself as an individual, but also as the all, as God? How can you hold those two positions in the mind at the same time? It's very difficult sometimes to think of yourself as both separate from God and also being God. And in order to get to that place where you can be one with God and also yourself, like Abaris was, to walk with God is to understand who you are, to understand that you have a role to play in this place, and that this life is an opportunity for you to grow and to change and to become something greater than what you are now.
Hey, thanks so much for sharing your views. I just want to say, you got into some places that might be a little bit scary to explore, and I love that you have the courage to go there and not say like one way or the other, is this good, is this bad. You're like trying to, as I understand you, you're trying to get to the core of the thing, rather than just stay on a judgment, which is pretty courageous, I believe. I just want to say to people who might have been, I don't know, bothered or I don't like the word triggered, but I mean, it's, people understand it. If anybody got triggered by it, just use the comment section to express your opinion with greatness, not just but write something that has a essence in the way you see things. I mean, it's totally valid if you want to share your views, and
Or,
I like,
ask yourself, why does this bother me so much? Why is this so offensive to me? Like, I'll admit, I've been offended before in my life. I've been scared of things. I felt helpless before. When I look at the world and I see that there's this evil group of people that are trying to murder us all, and they hate us, and they just, like, everything is designed to enslave us. It feels disempowering. It feels, God, it feels like hopeless, right? I mean, you see it, but what are you going to do about it? Nobody ever talks about solutions. And I'm not really giving you solutions to the problem. I'm saying, don't look at it as a problem. Change your perspective on it, and it will change your entire life, because the way you look at a situation determines how you're going to feel about the world around you.
Something that I understood is that pain, you were talking about pain and suffering. Pain is inevitable, but suffering is a choice. And that is a choice that is empowering. You can fall into victim mentality and think the way that you were saying, oh, everything is a conspiracy against humanity. And then your next action is you just sit down and cry about it, or go distract yourself. Or you can see the situation that you appear to be perceiving and find, okay, how can I transmute this and use this thing that I believe is happening? How can I use it to become greater than I am now, to be more of myself, and to if it is true, what is this small grain of sand that I can add to the world to transform what I am seeing outside? Because again, like I was saying a while back, we are becoming more powerful and more expressions of our abilities. And one of our main abilities is that our capacity to create reality, and it is created through the filter of our beliefs. So if we believe everything is a conspiracy, the world will reflect conspiracies all the time. And until, this idea of the Dalai Lama being friends with psychos or with weird people, it also talks, looking at it from a different perspective, maybe it also talks to his inner work and his compassion, that he is able to separate the person or the actions perhaps of the person from their essence. And he's maybe not friends with all or in agreement with everything that those people might have done, but he knows, when you're, this is how I understand enlightenment, or a little bit of it, which is our essence. We are already enlightened, but we have forgotten it. And when you remember your enlightenment or realize your enlightenment, you realize that everybody else is just a projection of yourself, because you, like you were speaking right now, you are able to be in your human incarnation, but at the same time remembering that you are God. And when you remember you are God, or from the perspective of God, everybody, or if you look at life as a dream, every character in your dream is you. And analogously, something similar is happening here. And when you remember your godliness, your enlightenment, you can see everybody and separate whatever wrongs they might have done from who they really are. And you can be friends from heart to heart. That's the idea of namaste, right? I salute the God within you that is the same as the God within me, or the essence, or that place within you that is not different from me. And again, I don't mean to sound like I am defending the Dalai Lama. I don't care one way or the other about the Dalai Lama, other than I'm at a place where I kind of understand this compassion from soul to soul, but I can also see or think of people as the symbol that they represent in the world. And I believe he represents something good. He might have his flaws and whatever. But in our journey that we're all going through, we can get lessons from pain, from suffering, but there is this way, you might like, I'll I'll share them. Or I recently spoke with this guy called Pan, and you will also like my conversation with Betty. With Betty
I listened to
Kovacs.
that one.
Yeah, okay. She talks about alchemy and all of this. She said, I just put up a quote from the conversation. She said, "The world is going through the mystery school initiation of death and rebirth, and that is part of the alchemical process that we're going through, learning to redefine the way we see things by growing ourselves and understanding that there is pain, there is suffering, but in a way, I'm understanding how there is also this, we don't necessarily need to go through, we can learn from other people's mistakes, and we don't need to go through those terrible suffering and terrible pain. You know, it's like our higher self is always trying to speak with us. This is something that Pan told me. Our higher self is talking to us all the time, but maybe we have our ears covered, so sometimes it needs to yell, it needs to scream at us so that we hear. And that could be like, okay, you have an accident or something very strong, a very strong experience happens in your life. But the kind of the maturing that we are doing is learning that we don't need to always be shaken by or shaped by the world or by the universe in order to wake up. You know, sometimes you can just wake up. I don't know if I'm there yet. I wish I could be speaking from experience. I'm speaking more from a place of resonance with those ideas, because I know I've had certain moments in life where I was hit really hard by life, and I've grown from that. But I know that I've also grown so much from connecting to the flow of life, you know, and not needing such a strong or quote unquote negative experience to grow. You know, there is growth also in flow and in acceptance and in compassion, which might feel like bad for some people, because there is this element of surrender within it. You know, that okay, something horrible happens, you can fight it or you can surrender to it. And when you learn to surrender to what's happening, you start creating and attracting and manifesting a kind of life that is more in tune with what you want. You know, when you start learning the surrender and accepting the surrender, life kind of flows differently. You know, it's not just that, okay, the same horrible things keep happening in your life and you're just like, oh, just accepting it and getting punched in the face by life. But it's more like there is, I guess there is kind of a process where the punches start dissipating and it starts being like caresses of the universe. But you kind of need to surrender to the punches, I guess, or learn surrender while you are going through punches. If you're going through punches in life, learning to surrender to that will bring closer and closer a more loving aspect of life, a more sweet aspect of life.
Well, if you think about if somebody is beating you or kicking you and you're fighting back, you're trying to defend yourself, the onslaught usually continues, right? The minute one person surrenders, nobody wants to beat a defenseless person that's not fighting, that's just sitting there, right? Most people don't want to keep hurting somebody that's not trying to defend themselves or hurting you back. So this idea of surrender, it almost cuts short the beating that you feel that you're taking, right? Metaphorically speaking. The idea that, you know, we're all born and we're given what we call an ego or a personality. And this is how we navigate this reality. And at some point we die. And then we're having a different experience. So if you think about what does it mean to exist? What is existence, or what is life? it's to have an experience, right? Whether it's in this realm or a different realm, either you're having an experience or you no longer exist. And we know that if you are having an experience, you exist, and that you will always exist, but the experience will change. So you, whatever you are, the energy that's within you, the light that is inside of you, will never die. It's eternal. So death is nothing. Death is simply just the next chapter, the next experience beginning, while the experience you're having is ending. Then you're having a new experience after death. So once you get over the fear of death, once death is no longer this terrifying thing that keeps you from actually living, then you can have these amazing experiences. You can go out and do the things. You can stand up for what you believe in. If you believe that this world is corrupted and you really want to do something about it, then you shouldn't have any fear of death. You shouldn't care who's listening to me? Is the NSA listening to this? Are they collecting all my data? Oh my gosh, I need to change my name and have like a pseudonym. And like, there's a lot of people that want that, and that's fine.
And thinking like that is completely inviting that kind of reality into your life.
Right.
And perpetuating that thing that you say you don't want, but thinking about it all the time. And now I'm going to change because I am against the NSA and the NSA is fighting against me. And
there's nothing wrong with that at all.
No, totally.
Right?
No judgment.
There's nothing wrong with being terrified of this world. There's nothing wrong with not having any fear, right? What I'm saying is that there's nothing wrong with however you're feeling is how you're feeling. And it's legitimate. And you're at a certain point in your journey, and I'm at a certain point in my journey, and we're never going to be at the same place at the same time. Very rarely are two individuals at the exact same place at the exact same time in the exact same journey. Because we're individuated, right? We're having a different experience. Your experience may look just like mine, but it's not mine, because I'm having mine and you're having yours. So everybody's experience is different, and it's no less valid than anyone else's. If you're at a place on your journey where everything has to be good versus evil, that's what you need right now. And that's what's going to help you get through this point and move on to the next point. And the way I'm viewing reality right now, there's by no means like the end for me. I don't have anything figured out. I don't have all the answers. All I know is what I can say for certain about myself and my own journey, what I'm experiencing, what I'm noticing. And yeah, I have this desire to help others, but I also have the compassion to let others go their own way and do their own thing. If they need to go out and comply with what's going on right now, because that's how they feel they need to do things, I encourage people to do that. I'm not trying to tell them all of these terrible things about it. I want them to go and do what makes them feel safe and what's going to help them get through the rest of this time here, right? I don't want people to do what I'm doing. I want people to do what they need to do. And that's really the message that I guess I would bring, is that, whatever path you're on, that's the path that you've chosen that you need to be on. And that's the one that's going to lead you to the next, eventually we're all going to get through this experience and move on to the next experience. And we're going to learn and we're going to grow. And it's all alchemy.
And we're going to laugh about it. Hey, it's a pretty nice place to start closing the first hour. I'm going to share something that I read the Bhagavad Gita, yeah, but I have it in Spanish. So I searched for the quote that I came up with randomly, which totally speaks to what we're saying. But I also want to invite people. I'm going to create this place, probably Patreon. I still haven't actually created it, but people will be able to find the second hour of our conversation with Erik Peterson. And yeah, we are going to continue with this, which is getting deep and powerful. I like that we have an opportunity to continue with a second hour. I'm going to get the quote. So it's Bhagavad Gita chapter 5, verse 23. Okay, it's a chapter on karma yoga, which is, you were just speaking on you want to help others, you know, and karma yoga has a lot to do with yoga, meaning union and reconnecting with yourself through action, through the Dharma, through doing what's right. Okay, and I think it's really nice that you say people. I don't want people to do what I want them to do. I mean, I wish if I was clear that people could learn from my example, you know, and not make the same mistakes I've made. Probably you feel the same way. But I also understand that their soul is in a particular journey, and if they need to have the direct experience of a certain mistake or a certain suffering, taking that away from them isn't correct. And it's not our place to judge that. All we can do is be an example for others and hope that whatever love we share, they are able to grab, and to the degree that they are. So here is the verse. I think it's pretty good. So I'm going to be reading from the same one that I have, which is from the Hare Krishnas. We just through synchronicities, I received this one, and it's where I've been reading the Bhagavad Gita myself. So, but I'm going to read the version in English, and I will read also. There's a short a description. They call it here a purport, but it's the meaning, let's say, or the analysis from the guy who wrote it. So who wrote the translation, I mean. So
I want to say too, before you read this quote, for anybody out there that has children, like most of these realizations that I've come to have come to me from being a parent myself and wanting to impart to my child all of the things that I've learned, and noticing that my child just wants to do whatever the heck they want to do. And no matter how many times I say, don't do that, you're going to get hurt. And then I turn around and they've hurt themselves because they did the very thing I told them not to do. I've come to this realization that I'm not saying we're all children in a sense. We're all doing what we're not supposed to do. And we're learning, because that's how you learn, is you fall down, you hurt yourself, you get back up and you say, I'm never going to do that again. But how many people told you not to do that thing in the first place from the beginning? And you just didn't listen to them because you're on your own path, right? And so that's kind of how I view this, is that you can tell people all you want, don't do this, this is better, this will save you time. Most people won't listen because they can't learn and internalize unless they go through the mistakes, the pain and the suffering, right? They have to fall and get hurt and get back up and grow stronger. If I'm telling them to avoid all of the pitfalls that are going to cause them to get hurt, I'm actually taking away from them the experiences that are going to cause them to be strong, right? And I'm making them weak by saving them from the pain and suffering. I'm weakening them, not strengthening them.
And at the same time, you can also look at it from the other side. And the story of the Buddha, him being a prince who was coddled completely and kept away from suffering, old age, disease, etc., death, and that very that bubble that they put him in, eventually, because of his karma, that bubble made him so curious of the outside world that he had to go out and find all and be face to face with all of the things that they didn't want him to. He eventually got in touch with all those things, and well, the rest is history. So yeah, but from our place, it's just offering the past experience that one has had, and hoping that the other person, because there is like a double lesson in doing the thing that somebody told you not to do. You get hurt or you suffer, and then eventually, how many times will people need to tell you not to do a certain thing before you learn to listen to the experience of others? That's like, it's not just don't do that, but also learn from other people's mistakes. It's that is like a a kind of a concept that I'm working with right now in myself. It's like, how many times do people need to tell you before you not only stop doing that thing, but also, oh, hey, maybe people have something to share. You want to respond to that?
Yeah, I mean, that I find a lot of value in other people's experiences. So I like listening to what other people have experienced, what they've gone through, because it does help me on my journey as well. So there's value in everyone's experience, no matter how small or mundane you might think the thing is. Somebody is going to find that it's helpful to them on their journey. So I definitely encourage other people to share their experiences, because I think that's, you can learn a lot from books. There's a lot of knowledge within books, but knowledge is one thing, but wisdom is the application of that knowledge, and people's experience. That's what you're getting. You're getting the wisdom that they've learned through the knowledge they've gained, and the application of it in their experience is their wisdom. And that to me is invaluable. You can't even put a price on that. So.
Okay, very good. I'm gonna read the verse from the Gita, and then we'll close this first hour. So it's verse 23, chapter 5. It says, I'll go straight to the translation. It says, before giving up this present body, if one is able to tolerate the urges of the material senses and check the force of desire and anger, he is a yogi and is happy in this world. Okay, and the meaning, it says, if one wants to make steady progress on the path of self-realization, he must try to control the forces of the material senses. There are the forces of talk, forces of anger, forces of mind, forces of the stomach, forces of the genitals, and forces of the tongue. One who is able to control the forces of all these different senses and the mind is called Goswami or Swami. Such Goswamis live strictly controlled lives and forego altogether the forces of the senses. Material desires, when unsatiated, generate anger, and thus the mind, eyes, and chest become agitated. Therefore, one must practice to control them before one gives up this material body. One who can do this is understood to be self-realized and is thus happy in the state of self-realization. It is the duty of the transcendentalist to try strenuously to control desire and anger. So I think that talks a little bit to what we were speaking just now. Let's close here. Thank you everybody for joining us in this first public hour, and we will maybe unpack that idea and continue exploring all of this in the second hour, all right?
All right.
Bye everybody.